Well, hello there, squirrels. Listening, squirrels. I've waited till late. I've got to make myself go to bed early tonight. I got to be at the leg wrapper. My physical therapist. Got to be there at 9. Oh my gosh. How did I ever used to be at work at 7? Holy Toledo. We're on chapter 11, part 2. The last thing I read was Tommy and the artist dude. The curator or whatever at that museum, I guess. He was talking about the painting. He said, "Oh," said Tommy tearfully. Said Tommy cheerfully, "I've just got to see a doctor about a body. Thanks for your help. Goodbye." Actually, did I read this? Hang on. Because he was already talking to the doc. And she was not one of their own. She was on the flutterer. They cluck, they forget things. Yep, I remember reading that. Is this Coco? Yep, we read that. Have a tenacious hold on life. She should have died hereafter. Yes. About Shakespeare and all that stuff. By myself to get dropped it up a good bit. Anyone can die. What is amateurishly called heart failure for one who's in really good shape for age. Yep, we did that. I'm so sorry. I'm using my old Kindle because my other one, I didn't take a look at it and the battery was totally gone. Overdoses of morphine. They call it morphia. I'm so sorry. I would have been at the right place, but it wouldn't come up at all. Battery was totally dead. They were unlikely. There was silence. I don't doubt it. Ooh. Here's a bookmark all of a sudden. I thought it should pop up. Okay, well. Hang on, I thought it was. And talking about people dying from eating bacon. Jean Gabron, I remember that angel of death. Giving me chills down my spine. Who runs the place? She's a what can I do? Your Aunt Miss Fanshawe was a resident there for some years. Tommy's telling about his wife being gone. She wrote, yeah, but you see, my wife rang up to say she would be back yesterday. She didn't arrive. And you're worried about her? Yes, I am. Have you consulted the police? Identification. She had her license and various other things. I read all of... Oh, Lord. I read all of 11. And I read part of 12. Good gravy. I'm so sorry, y'all. I should have waited to turn the thing on. Y'all just do something else for a minute. Lord, I have spent 5 minutes of your time tooting around. We're to the part where he's talking to Mr. Eccles that he doesn't like. Now there's a doggone bookmark again. So I should be close. I'm just going to start reading and hopefully, okay, hopefully we'll be close. Cheer my stomach. Okay. Okie dokie, let's see. I'm so sorry, y'all. Okay. Books Tommy thought gloomily. A mention of Mrs. Lancaster or Mrs. Johnson should have brought a guilty start or a shifty glance, something to show that the names are registered, that not all was well. All Mr. Eccles had looked like was a man who was too polite to resent having his time wasted by such an inquiry as Tommy had just made. Okay, I'm just going to start here. But all the same, thought Tommy to himself, I don't like Mr. Eccles. He recalled to himself vague memories of the past of other people that he had for some reason not liked. Very often those hunches, for hunches is all they were, had been right, but perhaps it was simpler than that. If you had had a good many dealings in your time with personalities, you had a sort of feeling about them, just as an expert antique dealer knows instinctively the taste and look and feel of a forgery before getting down to expert tests and examinations. The thing just is wrong. The same with pictures. The same, presumably, with a cashier in a bank who is offered a first-class spurious banknote. He sounds all right, thought Tommy. He looks all right. He speaks all right, but all the same, he waved frantically at a taxi which gave him a direct and cold look, increased its speed, and drove on. Swine, thought Tommy. Of course, I didn't bring my drink in here. His eyes roved up and down the street, seeking for a more obliging vehicle. A fair amount of people were walking on the pavement. A new hurrying, some strolling, one man gazing at a brass plate just across the road from him. After a close scrutiny, he turned round and Tommy's eyes opened a little wider. He knew that face. He watched the man walk to the end of the street, pause, turn, and walk back again. Somebody came out of a building behind Tommy, and at that moment the man opposite increased his pace a little. They can close in on Tommy. At that moment, I was increased, still walking on the other side of the road, but keeping pace with the man who had just come out of the door. The man who had come out of the Partingdale, Harris, Lockeridge, and Partingdale's doorway was, Tommy thought, looking after his retreating figure, almost certainly Mr. Eccles. At the same moment, a taxi, lingering in a pleasant, tempting manner, came along. Tommy raised his hand. The taxi drew up. He opened the door and got in. Oh, Lord, now they got him. Because lingering in a pleasant, tempting manner. Where to? Tommy hesitated for a moment, looking at his parcel, about to give an address. He changed his mind and said 14 Lion Street. A quarter of an hour later, he had reached his destination. He rang the bell after paying off the taxi and asked for Mr. Ivor Smith. I just knew that taxi was, I don't know. Anyway. When he entered a second-floor room, a man sitting at a table facing the window swung round and said with faint surprise, "Hello, Tommy. Fancy seeing you. It's a long time. What are you doing here? Just tooling around, looking up your old friends?" "Not quite as good as that, Ivor." "I suppose you're on your way home after the conference?" "Yes." A lot of the usual talky, I suppose. No conclusions drawn and nothing helpful said." "Quite right. All a sheer waste of time." "Most listening to old Bogey Waddick shooting his mouth off, I expect." "Crashing bore. Gets worse every year." "Oh, well." Tommy sat down in the chair that was pushed towards him, accepted a cigarette, and said, "I just wondered, it's a very long shot, whether you know anything of a derogatory nature about one Eccles, solicitor of the firm of Partingdale, Harris, Lockeridge, and Partingdale." Well, said the man called Ivor Smith. He raised his eyebrows. They were very convenient eyebrows for raising. The end of them near the nose went up, and the opposite end of the cheek went down for an almost astonishing extent. They made him, on very little provocation, look like a man who had a severe shock. But actually it was quite a common gesture with him. "Run up against Eccles somewhere, have you?" "The trouble is," said Tommy, "that I know nothing about him, and you want to know something about him." "Yes." "What made you come to see me?" "I saw Anderson outside. It was a long time since I'd seen him, but I recognized him. He was keeping someone or other under observation. Whoever it was someone in the building from which I had just emerged. 2 firms of lawyers practiced there, and 1 firm of chartered accountants. Of course, it may be any one of them or any member of any one of them, but a man walking away down the street looked to me like Eccles, and I just wondered if by a lucky chance it could have been my Mr. Eccles that Anderson was giving his attention to." Said Ivor Smith. "Well, Tommy, you always were a pretty good guesser. Who is Eccles? Don't you know? Haven't you any idea?" "I've no idea whatever," said Tommy, without going into a long history. "I went to him for some information about an old lady who's recently left an old ladies' home. The solicitor employed to make arrangements for her was Mr. Eccles. He appears to have done it up with perfect decorum and efficiency. I wanted her present address. He says he hasn't got it. Quite possibly he hasn't, but I wondered. He's the only clue to her whereabouts I've got. And you want to find her?" "Yes." "I don't think it sounds as though I'm going to be much good to you. Eccles is a very respectable, sound solicitor who makes a large income, has a good many highly respectable clients. Works for the landed gentry, professional classes, retired soldiers, sailors, generals, admirals, all that sort of thing. He's the acme of respectability. I should imagine from what you're talking about he was strictly within his lawful activities." "But you're interested in him," suggested Tommy. "Yes, we're very interested in Mr. James Eccles," he sighed. "We've been interested in him for at least 6 years. We haven't progressed very far." "Very interesting," said Tommy. "I'll ask you again. Who exactly is Mr. Eccles?" "You mean what do we suspect Eccles of?" "Well, to put it in a sentence, we suspect him of being one of the best organizing brains in criminal activity in this country." "Criminal activity?" Tommy looked surprised. "Oh, yes. No cloak and dagger, no espionage, no counter-espionage, no plain criminal activity. He is a man who has, so far as we can discover, never performed a criminal act in his life. He's never stolen anything. He's never forged anything. He's never converted funds, so we can't get any kind of evidence against him. But all the same, whenever there's a big planned, organized robbery, there we find, somewhere in the background, Mr. Eccles leading a blameless life. 6 years, said Tommy thoughtfully. Possibly even longer than that. It took a little time to get on to the pattern of things. Bank holdups, robberies of private jewels, all sorts of things where the big money was. They're all jobs that followed a certain pattern. You couldn't help feeling that the same mind had planned them. The people who directed them and who carried them out never had to do any planning at all. They went where they were told and did what they were ordered. They never had to think. Somebody else was doing the thinking. What made you hit on Eccles? Ivor Smith shook his head thoughtfully. It would take too long to tell you. He's a man who has a lot of acquaintances, a lot of friends. There are people he plays golf with. There are people who services his car. There are firms of stockbrokers who act for him. There are companies doing a blameless business in which he's interested. The plan is getting clearer that his part in it hasn't got much clearer, except that he is very conspicuously absent on certain occasions. A big bank robbery, carefully planned, and in parentheses, and no expense spared, mind you. Consolidating the getaway, all the rest of it, and where's Mr. Eccles when it happens? Monte Carlo or Zurich, or possibly even fishing for salmon in Norway? You can be quite sure Mr. Eccles is never within 100 miles of where criminal activities are happening. Yet you suspect him. Oh, yes. I'm quite sure in my own mind, but whether we'll ever catch him, I don't know. The man who tunneled through the floor of a bank, the man who knocked out the night watchman, the cashier who was in it from the beginning, the bank manager who supplied the information, none of them know Eccles. Probably they've never even seen him. There's a long chain leading away, and no one seems to know more than just one link beyond themselves. The good old plan of the sale? More or less, yes, but there's some original thinking. Someday we'll get a chance. Somebody who oughtn't to know anything will know something. Something silly and trivial, perhaps, but something that, strangely enough, may be evidence at last. Is he married? Got family? No. He's never taken risk like that. He lives alone with a housekeeper and a gardener and a butler valet. He entertains in a mild and pleasant way, and I dare swear that every single person who enters his house as his guest is beyond suspicion. And nobody's getting rich? That's a good point you've put your finger on, Thomas. Somebody ought to be getting rich. Somebody ought to be seen to be getting rich, but that part of it's very cleverly arranged. Big wins on race courses, investments in stocks and shares, all things which are natural, just chancy enough to make big money at, and all apparently genuine transactions. There's a lot of money. Wait a minute. There's a lot of money stacked up abroad in different countries and different places. It's a great, big, vast, money-making concern, and the money's always on the move, going from place to place. Well, said Tommy, good luck to you. I hope you get your man. I think I shall, you know, someday. There might be a hope if one could jolt him out of his routine. Jolt him with what? Danger, said Ivor. Make him feel he's in danger. Make him feel someone's on to him. Get him uneasy. If you once get a man uneasy, he may do something foolish. He may make a mistake. That's the way you get chaps, you know. Take the cleverest man there is, who can plan brilliantly and never put a foot wrong. Let some little thing rattle him and he'll make a mistake, so I'm hoping. Now let's hear your story. You might know something that would be useful. Nothing to do with crime, I'm afraid. Very small beer. Well, let's hear about it. Tommy told his story without undue apologies for the triviality of it. Ivor, he knew, was not a man to despise triviality. Ivor, indeed, went straight to the point, which had brought Tommy on his errand. And your wife's disappeared, you say? It's not like her. That's serious. Serious to me, all right. So I can imagine. I only met your missus once. She's sharp. If she goes after things, she's like a terrier on a trail, said Thomas. You've not been to the police? No. Why not? Well, first, because I can't believe that she's anything but all right. Tuppence is always all right. She just goes all out after any hare, H-A-R-E, that shows itself. She mayn't have had time to communicate. I don't like it very much. She's looking for a house, you say? That just might be interesting because among various odds and ends that we followed, which incidentally have not led to much, are a kind of trail of house agents. House agents? Tommy looked surprised. Yes, nice, ordinary, rather mediocre house agents in small provincial towns in different parts of England, but none of them so very, very far from London. Mr. Eccles' firm does a lot of business with and for house agents. Sometimes he's the solicitor for the buyers and sometimes for the sellers, and he employs various house agencies on behalf of clients. Sometimes we rather wonder why. None of it seems very profitable, you see. But you think it might mean something or lead to something? Well, if you remember the big London Southern Bank robbery some years ago, there was a house in the country, a lonely house. That was the thieves' rendezvous. They weren't very noticeable there, but that's where the stuff was brought and cached away. People in the neighborhood began to have a few more stories about them and wonder who these people were who came and went at rather unusual hours. Different kinds of cars arriving in the middle of the night and going away again. People are curious about their neighbors in the country. Sure enough, the police raided the place. They got some of the loot, and they got 3 men, including one who was recognized and identified. Well, didn't that lead you somewhere? Not really. The men wouldn't talk. They were well defended and represented. They got long sentences in Gaol, G-A-O-L. And within a year and a half, they were all out of the jug again. Very clever rescues. I seem to remember reading about it. One man disappeared from a criminal court where he was brought up by 2 warders. Phew. I'm going to stop there. Let's see how much more I have. I'm so sorry I made y'all wait forever. He's trying to find my space. But alright. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Right there. Alright. Have a good sleep. If you watch this Sunday evening or whenever you watch it, if it's day, have a good day. Love you all. Hope to see you Monday. Live at 5. Tea with me, GrannyDee. Love you bunches. Bye-bye.